Welcome to Soul Stories, where every tale touches the heart and inspires the soul. Rain poured relentlessly over the dimly lit street, turning the city into a blur of trembling lights and rippling puddles. Beneath a flickering lamppost stood Emily, her trembling arms wrapped protectively around her little daughter Lila. Their thin, worn-out clothes clung to their skin, soaked through by the cold November rain. Emily could feel the tiny heartbeat of her daughter against her chest, fragile, yet so alive. Just a week ago, life hadn't been this cruel. Emily had a job at a local cafe, a small apartment that smelled of vanilla candles, and dreams of saving enough to give Lila a better school, a brighter life. But when the cafe shut down without warning, everything began to fall apart like a paper house in the storm. Rent went unpaid, the landlord's patience vanished, and one by one their belongings disappeared into pawn shops. Now, all she had left was a backpack with a few clothes, a worn photograph of her late husband, and the innocent trust of a little girl who still believed the world could be kind. "Mommy, are we sleeping here again tonight?" Lila's small voice trembled as she looked up, her lashes heavy with rain. Emily swallowed hard, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "Just for tonight, sweetheart. Tomorrow will be better." But her words felt hollow against the roar of the storm. She tightened her grip on Lila's small hand, trying to hide her tears. They had walked for hours, searching for shelter, a closed shopfront, a dry corner, anywhere. Yet the city seemed to look away, every door shut, every passerby blind to their quiet suffering. Lila tugged at her sleeve suddenly. "Don't cry, Mommy," she said softly, pointing across the street. "Maybe that man will help us." Emily followed her gaze. Across the road, beneath the glow of a streetlight, stood a tall man in a black suit, stepping out of a sleek black car. His presence felt out of place amid the grime and rain, polished shoes splashing against puddles, an umbrella shielding him from the downpour. Even from a distance, Emily could tell he belonged to a different world, a world of glass towers, warm lights, and silent chauffeurs. For a fleeting moment, his eyes lifted, meeting hers through the curtain of rain. Emily froze, her breath catching. Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps pity, or something deeper she couldn't name. But before she could look away, a single thought crossed her mind. What if her daughter was right? What if just this once someone actually stopped? The man's name was Alexander Grant, a name that carried weight in every boardroom, every newspaper headline, every whispered conversation among the city's elite. He was the kind of man who made decisions that shaped markets, ended companies, and built empires. People described him as brilliant, decisive, untouchable, and utterly cold. He lived in a world where emotions were considered weaknesses, where kindness was a luxury no one could afford. For years, Alexander had believed it too. His life was measured in profit margins and property lines, not in smiles or human connection. But that night in the middle of the rain-soaked street, something cracked, something that had been buried for far too long. He had just left a late meeting downtown, a multi-million-dollar deal freshly sealed. The city outside his tinted windows looked like a blur of lights and movement, until his eyes caught sight of them. A woman and a child huddled beneath a streetlight. He should have looked away. He should have told his driver to move on. But the image stayed. The woman's trembling shoulders, the small hand clutching at her coat, the child's eyes full of both fear and faith. When his car stopped at the light, he stepped out before even realizing why. The rain hit him hard, soaking his perfectly pressed suit within seconds. His driver called out in surprise, but Alexander ignored him. He was already crossing the street. Emily froze when she saw him approaching. Every instinct told her to back away. Men like him didn't stop for people like her. She tried to pull Lila behind her, whispering, "Don't stare, sweetheart." But it was too late. The tall man had stopped right in front of them. The rain drummed on his umbrella as he looked at Emily. Really looked at her. For the first time. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling, yet there was a quiet dignity about her. "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked finally, his voice deep, steady, and strangely gentle. Emily lowered her gaze, her pride a fragile wall against the shame pressing down on her. "We'll manage," she said softly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lila's small voice broke the silence. "You look kind, sir," she said with a shy smile, rain dripping from her lashes. Something inside Alexander stirred, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. His throat tightened unexpectedly. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, he couldn't find the right words to reply. And as he stood there, a millionaire in the rain beside a mother and her child, he realized he had stepped into a world he had long forgotten how to see. Alexander told himself it would only be for one night. A small act of kindness, nothing more. He couldn't just leave a woman and her little girl out in the cold rain, not when he had an empty mansion with rooms that hadn't felt warmth in years. When Emily hesitated at the car door, clutching her daughter's hand, Alexander said quietly, "You'll be safe there, just for tonight." Her eyes searched his, uncertain but desperate. At last, she nodded. The drive to his estate was silent. Through the car window, Lila's tired eyes widened at the sight of the long driveway lined with glowing lamps and trimmed hedges glistening in the rain. The mansion loomed like a dream, grand, silent, almost unreal. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace welcomed them. Emily stood frozen near the doorway, dripping wet, unsure whether to take another step. Alexander handed her a towel, his voice low. "You can rest here. The guest room is ready." That night, while Emily tucked Lila into the softest bed the little girl had ever seen, Alexander sat in his study, staring at the fire. He told himself it was temporary. He was simply being humane. Yet something about their presence unsettled him. The house, once filled only with silence and the ticking of expensive clocks, now carried the faint sound of a child's laughter. One night became 2, then 3. By the end of the week, Emily insisted on helping around the house. She cooked breakfast for the staff, washed dishes, and even trimmed flowers for the dining table. Her touch brought life to corners long ignored. The staff, who had grown used to Alexander's cold demeanor, found themselves smiling again under her quiet kindness. And Lila, she was a sunbeam in the mansion's gray halls. She followed Alexander around, asking innocent questions, laughing freely, and calling him Mr. Nice Man. At first he'd correct her, "It's Mr. Grant." But soon he stopped trying. Somehow, the nickname didn't sound wrong anymore. One evening, as Emily served tea, Alexander said, "You don't have to do all this. I can arrange a place for you, and a job if you'd like at my company." Emily froze. "I don't want charity, Mr. Grant," she said softly. He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "It's not charity," he replied quietly. "It's a chance." And though she didn't answer right away, something in her heart told her. This man, once so cold, was beginning to thaw. Months slipped quietly into one another, and with them, the mansion began to change, not in its structure, but in its soul. The grand halls that once echoed with emptiness now carried the soft rhythm of laughter and footsteps. The silence that had once been Alexander's only companion was now replaced by the gentle hum of life. The sound of Lila's giggles, the clinking of cups in the kitchen, and Emily's soft singing as she moved about the house. Lila had grown stronger and happier. Every morning she ran down the staircase in her little socks, calling out, "Mr. Nice Man, breakfast time!" Alexander, who once began his mornings buried in business reports, now found himself sitting at the table across from her, pretending to enjoy the burnt toast Emily was still learning to make. He didn't mind. In fact, he hadn't smiled this much in years. For Emily, life had shifted in ways she couldn't have imagined. She had accepted Alexander's job offer, not out of pity, but with gratitude. She worked hard at his company, quickly earning respect for her honesty and quiet determination. The woman who had once wept under a streetlight now walked through life with her head high again. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she would stand by the tall windows of the mansion and watch the sunset bleed into gold across the sky. The light reminded her of how far they had come, from rain-soaked sidewalks to this place of safety and warmth. And each time she turned, she found Alexander watching her too, with an expression softer than words. One evening, as the rain fell again, gentler this time, Emily and Alexander stood by the same window where it had all begun. Lila ran through the hall behind them, giggling as she chased the housekeeper's cat. "She's happy again," Emily whispered, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. Alexander turned to her, his eyes warm. "She's not the only one," he said quietly. Emily blinked back tears, her heart swelling with a feeling she had long forgotten. Peace. Lila's laughter rang out again. "See, Mommy? I told you that man would help us," she shouted, grinning from ear to ear. Emily laughed through her tears as Alexander reached out and gently took her hand. Outside, the rain no longer felt cold. It felt like a blessing, washing away the past, making room for something new. For the first time, all three of them had a home, not made of bricks or marble, but built from trust, laughter, and hearts that had finally begun to heal.